But Sage, let us know about Alan Wake 2,
Yeah.
Night Springs.
So this is one of those very short but sweet expansions. Playing this for the first time probably didn't take me more than like 2.5 hours. Even that might be stretching it a little bit. But this is Night Springs, which is a kind of Twilight Zone parody that exists in the world of these different Remedy games. And in the first game, you could come across these TVs and you'd watch these little short, like live action black and white, maybe like 5 to 10 minute long little short film things. And here, this has been integrated into the base game, and you can play it separately. You can go to the menu, pick any of these 3 episodes, or if you're playing the game from scratch, you'll come across the TV. You can jump into it, play this, come back to the main game. But it is a anthology, right? Fictional anthology within the world itself, and these are framed as drafts of escape attempt stories that Alan has tried in the time in between the two games. So one of them is his like obsessive fangirl that lives in the small town, and it's kind of like her fan fiction of her being this like savior of her favorite author. And that one's very goofy, very silly. Just it's very fun. It's almost the most Twin Peaks that the series has ever been, which was a big inspiration for Alan Wake to begin with. The second episode is it's kind of like a rough parody of the events of Control. You play as the character from Control in the second episode, actually, and it's kind of like a loose parody mirroring the events of that game. Again, it's something that's it's very fun. There's not too many implications. These games are one of those things where there's so much lore and layers and connections between all these things that you could put, one of those registering conspiracy maps trying to understand what's going on. But this is much more laid back and fun for the most part. The third part, though, that one hits a little different. One of Remedy's games that they came out in, I want to say, like April 2016, was called Quantum Break. And that one is something that Remedy does not fully retain the rights to. That is a Microsoft owned IP. But Remedy has kind of cleverly gotten around that with these, and they won't say this outright for legal reasons, but these characters are very clearly kind of alternate takes on characters from that game. We have Sean Ashmore here. He played a character named Jack Joyce in Quantum Break. And then in Alan Wake 2, he shows up as, Tim Breaker about a game that was about breaking time. And then here in this DLC, you're playing as like another variation of him named Sean Ashmore, who gets sucked into the Alan. It's very weird. It's very meta. This one really kind of feels like a sequel in some ways to Quantum Break, and that's the one I want to say the least about, just because for spoiler reasons, it's got the most fun surprises and just like, wow, I really didn't expect them to take this far. Um, but it really just kind of feels like Remedy is at the top of their game. It's a very short expansion, but I wouldn't have had it any other way. The only unfortunate thing here, really, and it's not even a criticism because this was so out of their control. But it looked like there was meant to be 2 more episodes to this little anthology, and both of them would have heavily featured James McCaffrey, the voice of Max Payne, who played, again, not Max Payne exactly, but kind of a alternate Max Payne within these games. And if at the end of this expansion, there's a little in memoriam to him with some of the dialogue that they did record before he passed. So it's also got a nice little tribute to kind of one of those great video game actors. As far as DLC goes, this is a peak for me. I would say I wouldn't go all the way to the highest rating because it is short. But I think what's there is fantastic. You're getting great stuff out of this. It's very fun. Um, you have your kind of Twilight Zone style narrator here too, which is a character that's in the base game as well. Very much a kind of alternate take on the Lance Reddick character from Quantum Break as well. But yeah, I don't really have a lot of complaints here. The gameplay style feels a little different. It feels much more action heavy as opposed to the survival horror feel that the main game does. But if you played anything like Resident Evil, like the Resident Evil 2, 3, 4 remakes, you're going to feel pretty familiar with the way this feels. It's the same thing as the base game, more or less.
Hmm. Okay. Have you played much other DLCs that have come out this year?
God, big DLC stuff for this year? Not really. I mean, just I pop into the occasional Mortal Kombat character when those come out, but I can't think other than the Elden Ring expansion, which I have not touched yet myself. But I know one of our co-hosts on my channel is a good ways into it already. That's kind of all I can really think of, honestly.
Hmm. Okay. I was just asked because I just wonder how does it compare to other DLCs that have come out this year. Um,
Yeah, I mean, the last big thing I could maybe compare it to would have been maybe something like the Separate Ways DLC for Resident Evil 4 that came out late last year, which that I think was better overall, just because it just was much longer, it was much more fleshed out, it kind of felt like its own game almost in the form of a DLC. This really does feel like an expansion. But I'll also say, you know, you get this plus one more expansion for only like a $10 upgrade to the deluxe edition of the game. Like normally season passes are like 30 bucks for a lot of games, whereas this it's like $10 to get both of the DLCs for this. So maybe they're a little smaller in scope in terms of just the size and how much playtime you get out of these. But I think one, quality over quantity, and the charge, the barrier to entry to play them is also a lot smaller than I think most DLCs.
hmm. Okay. So Sage for Alan Wake 2, Night Spring gives it a